Welcome back to Intimidating with Nicole Leigh, starting over without apologies. I know there has been some time since my last episode, and you may have noticed a rebranding. When I first launched this podcast, I was diving in head first. Like I said in my first episode, if I had waited until I figured it all out first, I never would have gone for it. I have since learned some things, found my flow, and expanded to more platforms. This is an episode I was going to wait a little longer to record, but in finding my flow, I threw out all of my scheduled topics and I decided to completely start over. To take from my own title, it was intimidating to do this the way that I really wanted to and to be as authentic as I wanted to. So I felt like I had to be more digestible. But that's not me. And that is not what I want for anyone who listens to me. So as intimidating as it may be, I am going to start talking about the real stuff, the hard stuff, and all of the stuff that they tell you to save for your therapist. So let's jump in with why I named the show Intimidating in the first place. Since I was a little girl, people have told me I had such confidence. I never understood what they saw because for most of my life, 99% to be more accurate, I was absolutely terrified. I was filled with self-doubt, self-loathing, and an overwhelming fight or flight response. I was scared of everyone and everything. I never said what I really wanted to, and I definitely never did what I really wanted to. But what I did do was survive. That's what I knew how to do, and I did it well. Any kid who grew up the way that I did will tell you we aren't exactly given a choice. You either just do or you don't. What I do remember the most was constantly questioning myself and what I knew to be the truth. I vividly remember my mother doing things and saying things that she would later deny in front of others. I didn't know if it was the alcohol or her own shame, but she would look down at me with such adamant certainty and declare that I was crazy and making it all up. She made me feel like I was going crazy, and I would replay the events over and over in my head. To this day, I remember everyone exactly as I told it the first time. I suppose at some point, survival can look like confidence, which in reflection makes me sad. Do you ever hear those social media prompts asking, if you could tell your 14-year-old self one thing, what would it be? Thinking about it now, I suppose I would tell myself that we do make it out the other end, but happiness will only come if we can shed the battle gear. The big things I did in my life, though they may have seemed brave to others, were only done to escape my circumstances. I left home to escape my mother. I left the state to escape my family. I left my husband to escape my abuse. What people did not see is that I was always the other friend, the one not quite as pretty, not quite as cool. I was the smart kid in school, but always just behind someone else. I was talented, but just shy of talented enough. I had one serious boyfriend which lasted for years, but in an effort to comprehend why anyone would want to be with me, I can remember my mother and sister trying to reconcile that he must really be gay and hiding it. He was not. And to this day, that man is my measure of love. No person before him, and no person since him, has ever loved me or treated me as well as he did. I am convinced that finding that again will never happen. After a while, you learn to adapt in life. You learn that things are scary, but there is no one to take care of you, and you still have to get shit done. I never learned all the many lessons a kid is supposed to learn. And when life got hard, I didn't have someone to go to help walk me through it. So I did what I had to, and I didn't show any fear. Any kid who grew up in the inner city will tell you rule number one is to not show fear. Don't let them know that you're vulnerable. That's when they'll take advantage of you, whoever they are. After my divorce, I found myself with 3 kids and back where I was when I first left home 20 years earlier. But now with nothing to show for it. The reality that I had married my mother hit me like a ton of bricks. And the shame I felt for allowing myself to walk right back into a situation I had fought so hard to escape was overwhelming. Yet here I was, but I was alone. I had kids to take care of, kids I had to make sure didn't end up in the same place I had found myself. I didn't want them to see what I saw my mother do. Don't let them see me cry. Don't let them see me unstable. Don't let them see me scared. Polish that battle gear and let's go. I didn't start dating until long after my divorce was final. I didn't know what I was doing and had no idea what I was looking for. I had no confidence in myself. The words of my mother and my ex-husband constantly rang in my head, staring at my body that I was always self-conscious of and hid away, now older and changed after 3 children. My life with nothing to show for it, nothing to offer except interest in conversation and apprehension. I wasn't much of a catch. I started watching Nicole Walters of NicoleWalters.com on Facebook. She's a mom and an entrepreneur, and she would share parts of her life in short videos. She was very motivational, and I absolutely adored her. After watching for a while, she began discussing her struggles with weight and insecurity. I remember thinking to myself how I never once noticed her weight. There was not a single moment that I ever noticed her weight. I went back and scrolled through her page and rewatched her content. I wanted to know what I was missing. What was it? It was just her. She was just confident. She carried herself with confidence. She dressed with confidence. She talked with confidence. So I didn't even notice and see her insecurities until she brought them to my attention. That night, I decided I was going to make a change. I went out, bought new clothes, and adopted a new attitude. Even if I was full of anxiety and fear, I was not going to hesitate. I was going to say what I wanted. I was going to text what I wanted. I was going to carry myself like I was worth $1 million, even if I could only afford cheap liquor. Don't slouch. Don't ever insult yourself. Don't ever minimize your accomplishments. Don't ever act uncomfortable at compliments. Do not swoon. Do not accept bullshit. It didn't take long before my mindset towards myself adapted along with my new rules. After a while, my confidence came a little easier, though compliments still made me uncomfortable. Then he came into my life. The first time around, he pursued me with words I had never thought I would ever hear a man say again. He was everything I was looking for and then some. Too good to be true, I suppose. I fell hard. I was devastated when I learned, not by his own admission, that the longtime girlfriend that he had broken up with some 4 months previous was in fact still very much his girlfriend. It was months before we spoke again, this time because of work. I easily convinced myself that somehow this time would be different. The thing about me is that I am self-aware. I could admit that I was foolish for believing that a man who lied to me once would suddenly be honest, but I wanted to trust in him so badly. I desperately wanted to believe that there was a man that had enough integrity to look me in the eye and to tell me the truth, even if it hurt me. A man that I could respect. A man I could walk away from and still say, you are a good person and I will remember you that way. I knew he had been lying to me about a lot of things. But terrified of rocking the boat, I retreated any time he would get flustered at my questions until finally I confronted him and demanded an answer. He told me that he didn't want to be with me, going on to say, you intimidate me. No phrase ever cut through me with such agony like that did. It took the wind out of me. He couldn't clarify, but he didn't need to. I understood. That night, similar to the night of Nicole Walters' confession, changed my life. I did everything I could to appease that man, to make that man feel safe, understood, and cared for, and in the end, he still only saw me one way: intimidated. I told myself, never again. Fast forward 2 years later, and I dated a man who I originally ended things with. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that I had just lost my mother a month earlier and had to grieve that complicated loss completely alone. Maybe it was that I was closing up a 10-month custody modification battle and was overwhelmed and exhausted. Maybe it was because I hadn't dated anyone in over a year and old mindsets were creeping in. Maybe it was because he reminded me too much of someone else. Maybe it was because I saw his red flags immediately, and they were blazing. A month later, he came back into my life, and we reconnected. And I thought I was given a second chance to embrace what I had now convinced myself I must have run from. Shortly after, he ended it with no real explanation as to why. I was just left with my own self-loathing and a feeling of déjà vu. Listen, I'm not about to toot my own horn and to tell you that I am this perfect person and void of any flaws. Hell no. I'm difficult. I am anxious. I can be confusing and overwhelming. I'm needy, yet hyper independent. I talk too much. I don't like to share my feelings. I don't trust anyone. But I know all of this about myself, and I work very hard to compensate and make being with me worth it. On the last evening that I saw him, this man did say to me, "You're just so confident." Confident? At that moment, I was literally questioning what was wrong with me and why he didn't want me. I was replaying everything that I had ever said and did and asking myself what made me so undesirable. As I spiraled over the next few days, I would have conversations with myself over and over, trying to rationalize why these mediocre men I literally had to convince myself to find attractive and to date in the first place, had such a power over me. I had dated other men, better men, and when those encounters ended, they ended cleanly and on good terms. What was different? I finally began to realize that this had absolutely nothing to do with me feeling undesirable. This had to do with me becoming obsessed. Not with these specific men, but instead with the lies that they told. I was desperately attempting to get them to admit to me what I already knew to be true. And through their adamant denial, I was transported back to being a little girl again, being told I was crazy when I knew I wasn't. I can recognize that this side of myself can be intimidating for any partner to handle. Shit, it's a lot for me to even have to admit. But I sleep at night knowing that at least I'm honest with who I am. That little girl inside of me will never stop trying to find a partner she can trust. the truth is, no matter what you do in your life, whether it's go in no contact with your toxic family, making a big move, go into therapy, starting a new career, getting a divorce, starting over, going back to school, putting your heart on the line, or reinventing yourself, it will seem intimidating, and you may come across as intimidating to others watching you do it. Do it anyway. I promise you this, I would rather come across as intimidating to anyone who is feeding me a bunch of bullshit and making me feel crazy, even if inside I am shaken in my boots, than come across like others who just let the lies slide and they do nothing. Confidence? No. Intimidating? Yes. Because that's what life is. And I am more than ready to finally take off this battle gear.